So I've been recently scrolling through some WikiHow articles and oh, that isn't supposed to be here. Get out, get out, get out. So, as I was saying, I've been recently scrolling through some WikiHow articles and stumbled upon something truly breathtaking. How to beat the Eye of Cthulhu in Terraria. This video will be split up into 3 different sections according to the article: melee, mage, and range. Timestamps will be in the description below, so feel free to skip around, but I do encourage you to watch the whole video, as most of this article was hilariously bad. So anyways, without further ado, let's dive into it. So starting off with melee, our first choice is to craft an ebonwood or crimsonwood sword. You know what? Just logically think, how would this work? You're fighting the Eye of Cthulhu with a wooden sword. You just look at the footage, okay? This is complete nonsense, so let's just move on to the second melee recommendation. The second recommendation is a little bit more promising, but honestly, it's essentially the same. It's telling us to craft a gold or platinum sword, or at least make a silver or tungsten sword. Basically, the ebonwood sword doesn't really differ much from the gold or platinum sword, so there is absolutely no reason you should be fighting the Eye of Cthulhu with these swords. Number 3 says to craft spears or explore the ocean and find a trident. So this is probably where it starts making sense for the melee class. The trident is a pretty surefire way to kill the Eye of Cthulhu pretty quickly and early on in the game. And you can use the rotted fork, which I'm pretty sure does a little bit more damage than the trident. But still, I mean, honestly, you have to be pretty decent at the game to kill the Eye of Cthulhu with the tridents. Last but not least for the melee, we got the possibility of using a flail. So honestly, this is probably the best way to do it if you're going to go melee, besides some other choices that you will see later in the video. But yeah, the flails are actually pretty good. So if you can craft the meatball or break shadow orbs to get the Boio hurt, which is usually what I would go with, because to get the meatball, you actually need to beat the brain of Cthulhu, so it doesn't really make sense. But yeah, if you can get the Boio hurt, killing the Eye of Cthulhu should be no problem. Just get sufficient armor and honestly, you'll be pretty good. Alright, so as for magic, the very first weapon they recommend is the Star Fury, which makes absolutely no sense because the Star Fury, as you can clearly see, is a melee weapon. It does melee damage. Yes, they say that it fires stars from the sky, but that's still all melee damage. If you're going to fight the Eye of Cthulhu, the Star Fury should be your go-to, because honestly, killing the Eye of Cthulhu with the Star Fury is just a piece of cake. I mean, this would be my go-to weapon. You can get it pretty early on in the game. If you want, I have a video explaining how to get the Star Fury within 10 seconds, so in the top right there will be a card if you're interested in that. But yeah, as I said earlier, this is super easy, surefire way, great weapon. This part makes sense. The next tip is to enter the dungeon and search the dungeon for magic weapons, which, okay, so this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Why would you want, if you can't beat the Eye of Cthulhu, surely you probably haven't beaten Skeletron either. So honestly, this is a completely stupid tip. Don't go explore the dungeon, just kill the Eye of Cthulhu. But I guess for this experiment, I got the water bolt. Yeah, you can see how that goes. Okay, so the next tip is to break shadow orbs, which causes the meteorite to land. You can't do this anymore in Terraria 1.4, but since I'm playing on 1.3, I did this, and yeah, you can get the space gun, I guess. The space gun by itself isn't that good, but if you get meteorite armor, the bonus for it is that the space gun uses up no mana. So this used to be my go-to when killing essentially most of the pre-hard mode bosses, is you equip the full meteorite armor and just completely decimate every single boss that gets in your way. So yeah, this makes sense if you're playing on an earlier version. 1.4 can't really do this. So the next tip is to get the bee gun. I mean, even in the tutorial, even in the article, it says that this is kind of a stretch because you would have to kill the queen bee, which I personally would say is harder than the Eye of Cthulhu, and I guess a lot of you could agree. So there's no point of doing this, but yeah, I mean, if you want the bee gun and if you can get the bee gun, go for it. You'll kill the Eye of Cthulhu. Just wear armor and you'll be fine. Alright, next for mage, we got demon sights, crystal shards, and flame lashes. So yeah, essentially you can do this. You really don't have to. I mean, if you're really struggling to beat the Eye of Cthulhu, sure, get these. They will help you out. They will kill the Eye of Cthulhu pretty quickly, but it's not a necessity, and you could probably do without these weapons. The next tip is to beat Skeletron and get the Book of Skulls. So this is completely bizarre. I'm reading this, my head's about to explode. The drop chance for the Book of Skulls is extremely low, and you have to beat Skeletron. So this is kind of the same as end entering the dungeon, but I guess it's valid. You can kill the Eye of Cthulhu with the Book of Skulls. And in fact, the Book of Skulls was the fastest to defeat the Eye of Cthulhu thus far. So I guess if you can beat Skeletron and can't beat the Eye of Cthulhu, go for it. It'll be pretty easy. So moving on to the next one. Next we got gems, and specifically the gem staffs. Honestly, don't do this. The gem staffs are kind of useless. They're super underpowered. I mean, yeah, if you can get the diamond staff or like a higher rarity gem staff that does more damage, you can go for it. Just get some mana potions and the Eye of Cthulhu should be easy. But there's better ways to do this, which you will see further in the video. Now by far the easiest way to kill the Eye of Cthulhu, we got the ranged class. So for the very first tip, they said to use blowguns, bows, and boomerangs. I'll count the boomerangs as ranged. I know it's melee, but I mean, like, whatever. I'm going off the tutorial. I won't be using bows because you can't find that in chests, and I will use blowguns. And this is essentially one of the only tips that really make sense because you can find a lot of these things early game, and you will be able to kill the Eye of Cthulhu no problem with these, as I've done countless times in the past and in a previous video, which you could check out in the top right just in case you're interested. The next tip is to get the arms dealer and buy the flintlock pistol. So this is actually a pretty good choice. If you can get the arms dealer early game and buy some of his weapons, you will absolutely shred through most of the bosses. And if you're really having trouble, you can just farm some loot and buy the mini shard, which will completely rip apart the Eye of Cthulhu. So once again, I mean, this isn't necessary, but you can do it if you want to. Good tip. Let's move on to the next one. The next one is just to craft the space gun out of meteorite. We already did this, so we'll just skip past this one and go to number 4. Now, I really like number 4 because they tell you to break shadow orbs to get the musket. This is one of my go-tos as well. If I can get the musket from a shadow orb, I will use it. And I mean, just watching the footage, this thing completely tears apart the Eye of Cthulhu. And if you're struggling with the Eye of Cthulhu, or you just want to kill it really quickly, get the musket. And lastly for this article, we got the Undertaker. So basically this is just like the crimson version of the musket. And what is there to say? It's essentially just the musket reskinned. And yeah, it kills the Eye of Cthulhu really quickly. So this last one is a pretty good tip. I rate 10 out of 10. Great. If you made it to the end of the video, be sure to drop a like and consider subscribing as to not miss out on any future content. I hope you enjoyed your stay, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.